Welcome to the Embodied Sounds podcast. My name is Joshua Sam Miller. I'm a musician, environmentalist, and entrepreneur focused on helping people connect back to the natural world through the arts. On this podcast, we'll be exploring specifically how sound can help you live a more healthy and balanced life. Please learn more at embodiedsounds.com. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Embodied Sounds podcast. My name is Joshua Sam Miller, and I'm here with a very good friend today. Her name's Amber Herzog Lyman. Amber is a writer, a poet, an artist, and a catalyst, which we're going to learn a lot more about in this interview. Coming to us today from Sanger, California. Welcome, Amber, to the podcast.
Thanks, Joshua. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Likewise. So let's start with this word catalyst. Tell me what that means for you in how you describe yourself to the world.
Yeah, sure. In the traditional scientific sense, a catalyst is a component that can be added to a reaction that otherwise speeds or accelerates the reaction and the change that occurs when other elements or substances meet. And when I think about taking on that word as a descriptor, I think about the ways that I move in the world to bring people together, to connect people with each other, to connect people with nature, in some settings and instances, to connect people with their higher selves, as a guide, when I'm leading in yoga or meditation or ceremony. And that role of catalyst is my magic ingredient of making the reaction between those people, places, and things grow stronger so that some sort of bond or lasting change is formed.
I love that. It's really a reminder that we're not ever alone in this life. We are always connected somehow to another living being and
Yes.
living thing. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Not just to one, but to thousands or millions if we're counting, all of the microscopic living things that surround us and are part of our physical makeup. But in my practice of creating music and creating poetry, I am always thinking about the ways that we are in exchange with the earth, from the air that we breathe coming through the leaves of trees and plants, or when I'm by the sea, breathing in the exhales of the ocean, the exhales of the whales, and also thinking about the deep exchange of what makes up our cellular bodies, the food we eat, the water we drink. I have so much reverence for those natural components that make up who we are. And when I think in that way, it really eases the sense of isolation that we can sometimes feel as humans. It makes me feel more connected and definitely more at peace.
Yeah, absolutely. And your life, I think, has been such an inspiration already, and it kind of feels to me like you're just getting started, honestly, since we've met each other. It feels like you're really building a lot right now, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd love for you to tell us about some of what you've got in the works right now, in everything that you're building in that artistic part of your life. What's alive for you in this moment?
Well, what I'm most excited about is the culmination of the album, the creative work that I've been doing for the past 2 or 3 years in exploring how to bring my poetry and voice to the world in a way that it can really connect with people, and finding a channel and an outlet through music, mostly as a way to, I just really experience music and sound as a bridge and a carrier. Part of my experience of music is in kirtan and chanting and um, honoring the practices of connecting with each other and connecting with the divine through music. And I really see and understand music as a way for us to communicate from one heart to another, one body to another. Because when we are experiencing music and taking music in, something is happening in our bodies rather than just our brains. And I've really loved experimenting with pairing poetry and music as a way to really make that poetry digestible, is what I would say. I think that a beautiful soundscape is an entry point for people to drop in and experience the creative work of another without a lot of thinking or questioning or judgment. And I really love any opportunity to get out of our hyper cerebral human mode and drop into the more physical and embodied experiences of being human, which sometimes take a back seat in our modern world. So that's definitely the project that I'm most excited about sharing, and yeah, just bringing it out into the world after a couple of years of letting it grow.
I love that. Amber has a new album coming out called Listen Deep, which is going to be available on October 13th, next Friday. And we have been working on this together, you and me now, for close to 2 years, I would say. So this is a huge accomplishment. I'm so proud of you on so many levels to have been, from day one, committed to bring this into the world. It really does feel like you birthed this album and that it came through in such an organic, authentic way that I'm so excited to share with you, with everyone. There's 12 tracks on the album, and each one, as I've witnessed them develop, really felt like they took on a character of their own. Would you agree with that?
Totally. Yeah, really distinct personalities.
Did you kind of know that when you came into this process of writing, I'd say deciding that you wanted to release an album? Did you see them from the beginning as 12 distinct pieces of work, or how did that kind of evolve for you?
Yeah, it's interesting looking back. You know, some of the songs feel like siblings to me, but they each definitely feel like their own characters. And that's been one of my actually greatest challenges as an artist is I have a real resistance to fitting inside any one particular narrow channel because I'm such an explorer. You know, I love adventure, I love discovery, and I really love honoring and exploring different traditions and different modalities of expression. And so when I set out to create this project, I didn't have any aspiration of creating a singular identity. I wanted it to be an exploration of the different facets of who I am, how I create, and most importantly, of the deep opportunities for connection that I see with nature. And those are multiplicitous. There's a million different ways that we can create and inspire and enjoy connection with the living world. And it was really fun to participate with a team of creators who was excited to explore that range on this project.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. I have so many fond memories of this creative process of what I like to call discovery, which I think is a really fun way to look at it, because especially with an album like this that, for those who are unaware, started as just lyrics and beautiful, beautiful poems without any music or any, genre or any kind of familiarity in a song structure at all. These were channeled poems that Amber wrote 100% original, inspired by her her life and connection to the natural world. And she came to us as a recording studio with these beautiful poems and said, I would like to do something with these. And we decided that it would be a good fit to make an album together. That was kind of the starting place. And I remember that quite fondly as the starting place for how this project really came to be. I feel like you gave me such a new way to relate to words
Mhm,
by having that challenge brought into my space as a
mhm.
musician and a composer who doesn't really listen much to the lyrics in most songs.
Right, right, right.
To be honest, I'm more the type of listener who hears the melody, who hears the beats, and the great bass line.
Yeah.
And sometimes the lyrics kind of go over my head in a lot of music. And someone will say to me, "Wow, that was such an amazing story that song was telling." I was like, "Yeah, I know." And the guitar solo, right? It was incredible. So starting to work with you on this and be delivered, on my desk. I think at the time we had 14 or 15 poems that we
Hmm.
started with. And
Right.
of course, the editing process, you always have to cut them down. So maybe we'll release the bonus tracks one day. But how to cull down, such an incredible body of work, which it really was, into um, music that would tell a story collectively and fit on an album was an incredible challenge, and one that brought a lot of pleasant surprises. And I
Hmm.
think as people start to listen to these songs, which really are now beautiful, beautiful songs, with the help of our co-producer Ben Leinbach, of course.
Hmm.
Um, I'm so excited to hear what people have to say about these. So Amber's album Listen Deep is definitely one not to be missed. It's really been a incredible journey to bring it into the world, and now we get to share it. So what is the first track that you'd like to share with people here on this podcast to give them a little taste of what's coming?
Yeah, even before we dive into that first song, I just want to reflect on like the joy of making the of walking through this process with you. It's been really delightful getting to know the world of music through your experience. And it's been really special bringing our two unique brains together
Mm.
on these projects that we've worked on, because it's become very clear to me that my world of words is one that's quite foreign to you. And I was laughing as you were reflecting because I gifted you a book on sound that's very sacred to me, and by the teacher and writer Joseph Real. And
Mm.
he is a medicine person and speaker of the Tiwa language. And the Tiwa speakers understand that the sound of every word carries the essence of the material thing that that word represents.
Mm.
The sound of the word and the material object are inseparable.
Mm.
And so he was the writer that really, and the teacher that really introduced me to that concept of carrying deeper meaning through words and through sound. And then I know when that book found a home at your new home, you said, "Oh, I was unpacking my books and I had about 5 books," and I turned around in my office and I'm like, "Okay, I have 500. This is the difference." Um, but in turn, working with you and working with Ben has been such a beautiful entry point to walking into that world of sound. And as we created these pieces together, I really felt the evolution of a soundscape, of this sonic landscape for each piece of poetry or work to roam. And that's really how I thought of the creative process for each piece. Is the poetry felt a bit like a person on a journey, but it can't be isolated. The journey has to have context, it has to have setting, it has to have other obstacles and experiences that person encounters. And that's really what the soundscape for each piece created, is a setting for that person to wander. So that's really how it felt when it was unfolding. And that's really the essence of the journey that I'd like our listeners to experience too, as they dive into the individual songs and into the album.
I love that. So well said. Obviously, you're a writer, you're a poet. So well said. Well, let's listen to something. So,
yeah, let's talk about Alive.
How about Alive? I was just going to suggest that one. Yeah, tell us about Alive. What is this track about?
The poem Alive was born on the island of Maui. And I spend about a third of my time on that sacred island. And over the past decade, I have formed a really deep and critically important to me spiritual relationship with the elemental forces of the island, with the ancestors of the island, and with the living embodiments of the plant life there on Maui. And in Alive, when I'm there in Maui, I'm often there alone. And when I'm there alone, my entire day is devoted to the practice of exchanging with the island. So back to that concept of exchanging breath, exchanging food, caring for plants, caring for the food we're growing, and then also in a very mindful and deliberate way, participating in making offerings to the island, offerings of gratitude and thanks, and showing the elemental forces that govern that place and that make it so beautiful and vibrant and thriving, showing them that I am present, that I am aware of them, and that I am very, very grateful for their participation in caring for that island, and in turn caring for me when I'm there. And it was a very quiet day where I was moving around my space, making those offerings to the land, to the ocean, to the trees, and the presence of the goddess Pele, who's the traditional Polynesian spirit of the volcano, the embodiment of the lava itself. So she functions as both creator and destroyer of those islands. She just was so present for me in what almost felt like a human form. And that poem arose as a very straightforward, simple love poem to the goddess Pele. And I wrote it just in reverence for reverence and excitement for the ways in which she makes that place so vibrant and also so violent. Because creation and destruction are equally important. And that practice of honoring the cycle of death is really important, preparing us for birth. And with the imagery of lava and being in a place like the Hawaiian Islands where we can see the new land literally growing from cooling lava in so many different places, it really is a way where we can experience the expanse of geologic time very differently. And so that piece considers all of that, And then also just talks about the sensations of excitement and connection that we feel when we're in the presence of somebody that we love and we feel loved by.
Again, so well said. So well said.
Mm-hmm.
Alive is a very special track on the album. It was one of my favorites to record because I really got to watch you come alive in the studio
Mm-hmm.
when we recorded it. And I remember that one specifically because we did all of the tracks together in one day, the first rough recordings of all of the vocals on this album in one day, because we weren't living in the same place and we wanted to be kind of efficient with time and, you know, ready to go. So it was a long day. And when this particular track came up on the list to do, I think something in the both of us really felt what it's all about. And it kind of felt like a new part of you was coming through in this track, I would say, that I hadn't seen before. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. This was the first experience I had on the mic recording where something else took over. You know, where some beautiful spiritual momentum just took over and really shifted the way that I was speaking and the way that I was delivering that poem. And it had a life and a character of its own from the very beginning. And I felt that in the vocal. We knew that in the vocal while it was happening. And man, the excitement of meeting that doesn't even compare, though, to the first time that I heard the melodies that you created to wrap around this piece.
Oh, thank you. Well, to give some context around that, so I was living in Costa Rica at the time that we were really working on the composing and the arrangement of this track. And so also inspired by an environment that is very alive, being in the Costa Rican jungle. Sometimes I'd even say too alive, because nature can be very loud sometimes too. And it really was in the jungle at this particular month of the year, somewhere around February or March, I remember. And I was in a home studio, in kind of a bedroom studio, very simple, and all of a sudden just heard this saxophone melody. I was kind of noodling around one day and practicing and doing my scales and some improvisation, like, you know, that's been a big kind of approach for me on the saxophone. I decided not to get too technical with it yet. And so I was just kind of finding my way around the instrument, and I heard this melody and I just opened up my iPhone and recorded the melody right away. That was it. It was like, this is something, and I don't really know what I want to use it for yet, but I know I want to use it for something. And then I kind of waited maybe a day or two, and then I just realized this is the melody for Alive. And it just all started to come together. And I did a quick test and overlaid it under the read that you had delivered about maybe 2 weeks before, when we were together in California. And it just started to flow. So kind of same thing, I would say. There was something that happened playing the horn that allowed me to also get out of the way and let something else come through, which was a nice shared experience that we had making this track. So that's a little bit of backstory for you, and I think this is a good time to play it. So we're going to cue up Alive by Amber Herzog Lyman and Joshua Sam Miller. Enjoy.
Alive, I strive to live from deep inside. Enter heart space, touch my center, look into her eye. The core inside me, fiery magma, I know she'll never lie. So I send my breath to tend her fire. She warms, releasing with a sigh. On fire. We move together, bodies beating, hearts so soft entwined. Heat is rising, tend each other, grow green and unify. Earth, she holds me, gravity, explore my own space in time. And from this vessel, my earthly body, birth my own divine. Open, feeling, rock soft, then reeling. Spine grows tall like pine. Expand heart's range for my own true nature. Mother, lover, on fire, alive. On fire. Alive. On fire. Alive, alive, expand heart's range for my own true nature. Mother, lover, on fire, alive, alive, alive. On fire. Alive. On fire. Alive.
So, welcome back from that experience. I hope you enjoyed it. And of course, this track really wouldn't have come together without the incredible contribution of two other amazing artists, Ben Leinbach and Angelica Hernandez, on backing vocals. And when we were working on this song from the jungles of Costa Rica and the mountains of California, we both knew that it wanted to become a song. I think we both felt that it had that potential and could really make a leap from being, a very nice combination of spoken word poetry with some music, that it had the potential to take on a different character and shape of its own. And working with Ben to receive us at that moment in time as a duo, an artistic duo, and work with us through the arrangement and songwriting process to create a structure that had verse and chorus and bridge and musical interludes and spaces for solo and an ending, was such an incredible experience. I really remember how it felt when I first listened to the rough mix of this track and heard the song come to life, which also took a completely different shape than I was ever expecting when we recorded both the vocal delivery as well as the melody. So I have to really call attention to that here, because the process of writing a song can be quite intimidating, but I was so inspired by how, with enough presence, enough confidence, and also some experience on Ben's side of really putting that together,
Mhm.
allowed this one to come to life. And I really want to emphasize that because I know there are a lot of artists out there who want to release maybe their first song and really want to encourage that creative process. If there's a bit of anxiety or fear or nervousness, to just give it a try and see what happens, and inspire more people to have the uh, I'd say the courage, to go for it like that, because it was so exciting, and I want to know what you have to say about that as well.
Yeah, not only to go for it in sharing the finished music, but really to go for it in the sense of being open to a collaborative process. You and I started with the pieces that we brought to the table, the melody and the incredible saxophone jam and the words and the voice, and then we laid those pieces out for Angelica and for Ben, and just felt so open and trusting to them applying their respective kinds of magic to the process and really shaping and molding what the song wanted to become. And that process of collaboration felt so easy and so organic. This was literally the first song that we recorded with Angelica, and the first song that I ever worked on with Ben. And for Angelica and I to walk into Ben's home studio, where he creates an absolutely epic amount of really beautiful music, could have felt really, really intimidating. Ben's been in this world for a long time. He has accomplished so much and been a producer and a musician for so many people that I really respect and admire in the music world. And sitting down in his studio just felt like sitting down with a friend from the very beginning. And it was really incredible to really trust in his ability to shape and shift and form what we were giving him, and to make it something that had structure and shape that became identifiable and unique and special. And I have just an incredible amount of respect for the way that Ben literally would take the pieces of the song. He watched, as I'm watching him work, I see him working with these various components, and these things that feel very nebulous and ethereal to me, for him, have very specific uses and very specific homes. So he would pull these components of different verses, different sounds, and just build them into a structure where all of a sudden they made sense, where they had an identity, and where they became something really easy and pleasurable to listen to, because that amount of structure that he brought to the songs gives a sense of security and a sense of pace and an identity of where we're going. And his ability to create that sonic space in a way that's organized and appealing is, I think, really what takes this album to the next level.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And even though I wasn't present at any of the recording sessions in person with Ben, I kind of felt that come through in the mixes
Mm-hmm.
that I was hearing and being sent. And that also was so inspiring to watch, for so many reasons, and especially for you as a new vocalist, as a new artist, to really be pushed like that in the studio, and also guided and supported at the same time. And I wonder what maybe you might offer to someone who also wants to release her or his first track or first album, that maybe is holding them back, on on this podcast, I really like to inspire
Mhm.
more people to get in touch with that sense of sound and connection to the element of sound. And based on your experience working over the last 2 years on these uh, tracks and on this body of incredible work, what would you say to someone who is just getting going, either writing their first poem or maybe has a poem written and wants to put some music to it uh, in a way that you did? What would you have to offer that person?
Just the words that come to mind are start exploring. You know, start. I started pairing my poetry with music by literally exploring different ambient tracks through a streaming service and um, writing over them. You know, I remember the first time that I actually wrote a poem to music when I found a track that I loved that just had a cool grooving beat and no lyrics. And it was the momentum of that beat that pulled that poem along, that transformed it from something that, you know, maybe was under a minute spoken. That momentum pulled me forward so that more of the poem emerged, and the story kept going. But without the engagement with the beat and the music, that momentum wouldn't have occurred. So start exploring those pairings. And the other thing that I would really point to is just looking back at that gift of collaboration. You know, in thinking about my experience of entering the studio the first time with Ben and Angelica, a little bit of backstory on Angelica and her, how her talent has emerged. She and I actually met in a yoga teacher training like 9-10 years ago. And she was one of those humans where immediately I felt a real soul kinship with her and felt a sense that we have similar ties to honoring really ancient traditions of relationship with the earth, and that so many of those practices have their roots in sound and in song. And we did some retreat work together. And in fact, I held a retreat that Angelica participated in, and it was around a sacred fire where we were guided by another really incredible elder named Sentua, who was guiding us in song that night. It was that night that Angelica rediscovered her voice, and that shifted her path from teaching yoga to engaging in music full time. And since that time, she's been touring around the country with different projects and different ceremonies, primarily lending her voice to sacred ceremonies that honor the water and the land, with tribes across the northern and southern parts of North America. And so in terms of bringing that collaboration in, for me to enter that space of recording that poem and recording that song with Angelica by my side, you know, having someone that felt like soul kindred there to explore their essence and what they had to offer to the song, really freed me to do the same. And it felt, it became inviting for me to share instead of intimidating. So I think that finding that one person who's not just a listener, but also has the ability to participate and co-create can be very, very liberating, because as soon as you're looking across the table and honoring the work and creation of somebody that you care about, then you become a lot more comfortable receiving the same. So that relationship is critically important. And that's also been a signature of how you and I have worked together as artists.
Yes, I would agree. And that's such a good point. The power of collaboration is transformational because it kind of, well, there's so many reasons why I don't want to try and define it as one or another, but
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I see beneficial about that process, which is not easy to do, is to really have to know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and have that awareness and willingness to look within yourself when mirrored by a collaborator
Mm.
to do that for you. And I think collaboration works, of course, better with certain people than others,
Hmm. Yeah, fair enough.
especially artistically. And I really have been so grateful and happy for the incredible team that all worked together to pull this album off for sure.
Hmm.
Of course, you hear stories all the time of bands and musical groups, fighting and never speaking to each other again. And I think that's also worth mentioning because the process of creating art is so personal and
Hmm.
so unique, and sometimes that can be really a lot for a person to have to look at, objectively about their own art and be willingness to change something, or alter it a little bit. And that's not something that so many people take so easily. And I'd say watching your openness to really let these poems go where they went and where they are
Hmm.
going um, was very inspiring, because as the creator of them, you could have just said like, no, that's the poem, and that's what it is, and don't change it. But your willingness to really work with artists that you were able to trust was quite unique, I would say, in this
Well, and
process.
it's organic, right? It's back to that image of us being one tree in a forest.
Hmm.
You know, when, for example, working on Alive at that time with Angelica recording those vocals, I brought her into that song because at that point there was no way that I was planning on singing in this album.
That's what I want to talk
Even
about next, actually.
even though you told me, even though you told me early on that I would be. And I was open to the idea, but I'd never sung before in front of anybody, and I didn't even really consider that a possibility. But watching Angelica do her thing was one of the components that really eased me into becoming more confident in exploring my voice and my vocal range, and again having that friend and collaborator who was willing to talk to me about that process, about how that process is sometimes intimidating, sometimes inspiring, sometimes beautiful, sometimes a little scary. It really freed me to follow down that path.
That's great to hear. That's fantastic to hear. That was kind of what I was hoping would happen, and
Mm-hmm. And it did.
and it did. And there was a bit of kind of a roll of the dice with this one. I'd say, for many different reasons, and I
Mm-hmm.
really just admire your trust and commitment to get it to where it is today. You really have been like the driving force and really holding everyone accountable and to the highest, potential. So you really have put in a lot into
Yeah.
this, and it's just been so much fun to work on, really. So,
And also pairing that drive and structure that I have from my other work, my other past lifetimes of professional work, pairing that with that organic sense that I'm just one tree in the forest, right? And that I have the ability to seed what I can seed, but that I'm not the force that's going to make it grow. That we also need the sunlight, we also need the rain, we also need the grass, we also need the deer. And I just really, in the collaborative process, welcomed in those other energies because I knew before we began, but then I watched it unfold. Bringing those other energies in can only make it better. When everyone's operating in their highest, when everybody's operating at the peak of their own skill set, it's something I really believe in very strongly in building collaborative teams of all kinds, is when everyone is working in their own mastery, that's when we have the potential to create something that's really unique and beautiful.
100%. Well, let's listen to another song. What do you say?
Yeah.
How about Our Mother?
Okay, that was a beautiful one to create. And I think that was I think it might have been the first track that I started singing as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And that one also features some vocals from our friend Ben, doesn't it?
Really incredible vocals. And Ben would say that he's not a singer either. But I disagree. And I've actually just come from an experience of leading a women's retreat in Portugal, and Our Mother played a really pivotal role in some of the ceremonies and experiences that we shared there. And I had so much feedback and inquiry about who is that man singing? Like, his voice is so incredible and so captivating. So the vocals really did come through on that one. And on Our Mother, it was the first time that Ben and I in the studio actually restructured the poem live while we were creating, in order to write the hook for that song just on site, and to expand the song parts as we were creating it together. So we laid down the poetry and had sort of a baseline and understanding of what the music was going to be. And then from there, Ben's like, okay, we could really use this piece. Let's work on a hook. What could we do here? And literally, as he's experimenting with melody, the words are coming through.
Wow.
So that was the first time that I was able to experience that real synthesis of co-creating live. And there was just an absolute joy in that I think really comes through in the song and comes through in our voices too.
I totally agree. Let's have a listen to it. This is Our Mother by Amber Herzog Lyman and Ben Leinbach.
Our Mother, who art an ocean, hallowed be her name. She makes our air, she loves, she cares. She rocks our boats and sweeps our beaches with waves. She makes you feel something as you watch her storms brew, or even in soft seas, watch her shimmering light change. She shows you her deep when you look out to sea, her nature, her movement, her pace. The flow of shapes fleeting, she's dancing, she's leading, she's calling us back into place. Because we belong here together, a common purpose in service, in healing, in moving with grace.
Waves roll to rock you, sets they move into, pulled down by the earth and held up by the moon.
So let us listen to the sea's needs, shift our focus back to nature. It's time to act now. It's time for a change. Turn our fronts back towards center and lean in together. Feel the light warm us, hearts rearranged. We'll flow in reciprocity. She'll care for you while you care for me. This is how we can make being human on Earth more humane.
Waves roll to rock you, sets they move into, pulled down by the earth and held up by the moon. Waves roll to rock you, sets they move into,
Her blood flows in our veins.
Waves roll to rock you, roll to rock you, roll to rock you.
We all learn from the ocean. Let her lead the way. Roll now with the waves.
Waves roll to rock you,
Rock you
sets they move into, pulled down by the earth and held up by the moon.
in water, in love, in
Waves
place.
roll to rock you,
Rock you.
sets they move into,
Her blood flows in our
pulled
veins.
down by the earth
The earth
and held up by the moon. Waves roll to rock you,
rock you
sets they move into,
in tune.
pulled down by the earth and held up by the moon.
Let her show the
Waves
waves.
roll to rock you,
Rock you
sets they move into,
in tune.
pulled down by the earth
The earth,
and held up by the moon.
the moon,
And held up by the moon.
the moon,
And held up by the moon.
held up by the moon. Our mother, who art an ocean, hallowed be her name.
Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed Our Mother. Such a beautiful track. I remember the first time I heard this one and heard Ben's voice. After working with him for about 4 or 5 years now, I had also never heard him sing and was just shocked how well your voices work together. They really, really sound fantastic. And I feel like this track took so many different shapes and forms. I'd say it was one of those that kind of took a while to find its place, and then once it found it, it was a hit, I'd say, from the beginning. So
Mhm.
how else would you describe Our Mother to our fans here?
Well, I have loved this poem since the day that it was born. This poem was actually built out of much of the collaborative work that you and I have done around oceans and ocean conservation. Much of my professional writing history has been, for example, in film. I wrote the documentary film Ocean Souls, co-wrote that with Philip Hamilton, and that's a film about the conscious experience of whales and dolphins. And you and I have explored how we can connect people with the essence of the oceans to receive the benefits of the mental health and the physical benefits of connecting with the oceans. And for Our Mother, it was born as a very deliberate rewriting of the Lord's Prayer. So the traditional Lord's Prayer that many of us in the Christian tradition grew up hearing begins, "Our Father who art in heaven." And to be honest, with the work that I've done personally, professionally, and spiritually in my lifetime, I no longer wish to pray to a removed Father God. I very deliberately have decided that I will be praying to the earth and to the oceans and to the forces that actually give us life. And so this song and the poem opened as a prayer to the ocean. "Our Mother, who art an ocean, hallowed be her name." And it explores all the ways in which I feel deep reverence and appreciation and love for the oceans as a source of life and also as our place of origin. All life on earth is connected to the oceans through breath, through the water cycle, and through the processes of, how we've come to be, how we've evolved. And it was beautiful to explore that in poetry and then to really set that poem free to become a song and to take on the character that Ben and I created together that became much more joyful and celebratory about our connection with the oceans. And so much of my poetry, when I write in a cadence, I'm writing to what feels like the rocking of waves. That's a real signature in my writing. And we carried that theme forward sonically in the creation of this one. And I just love the way it turned out.
Me too. Me too. I love hearing that backstory too. I obviously felt the similarity to the Lord's Prayer, but never really understood that much detail around how you flip things around to highlight the feminine in that. And it really comes through. I feel quite connected to this poem, of course, with the topic matter being around the oceans and all of the work that I've been doing in that space over these last couple of years. And of course, it's kind of one of 3 tracks on the album that to me really relates to the body of water, that takes over 75% of our planet, with the other 2 tracks being The Descent and Ocean Souls, which I really loved as well to get to work on with you. And I feel like there's so much wisdom in your writing. It's really kind of remarkable. I think you could listen to these tracks over and over again and kind of hear something new and learn something new at any point in time. And I feel like, artistically speaking, I don't like to make statements too often, but I do feel like this album does make quite a bold statement to connect people with themselves and with the beauty of nature. And I'm curious, as I see the kind of golden light coming in on your camera here, what you would like people to walk away with after they've listened to your album that's coming out next week. What is kind of one thing that you want them to walk away with after having that experience?
It's so interesting that what you just distilled in the essence of the album really matches my mission statement for this lifetime, which is to inspire people to closer connection with their higher selves, with the natural world. Upon listening to this album, I really just want to ignite people's curiosity about what that connection can look like, what it can feel like, what it can generate, what it can spawn, what it can nourish. That connection has been the source of everything for me, everything good that's happened in my lifetime, in my creative lifetime. And yeah, I just want people to be curious enough to explore it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast here today, Amber. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you. And for those listening, you can follow Amber on Instagram and all the social media channels, and visit her website, which is amberherzoglyman.com, and we'll put all of that in the show notes. Is there any other place we should let people know to connect with you?
Yeah, the other place to connect with my work is on Instagram. That's where I'm releasing new information about what I'm working on, new music coming out, any upcoming performances, new collaborations, and also my work in leading retreats. So all of that is available on Instagram at Wild Wonder Nature.
Amazing. Definitely reach out to Amber and connect with her to learn about the amazing work she's doing. And if you like this podcast, definitely share it around with your friends. We are the Embodied Sounds Podcast, also Embodied Sounds Studios, and we will be releasing Amber's album on Embodied Sounds Records. So we look forward for you to hear it on October 13th. See you very soon.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being with you today.